All right, good evening, everyone. I am Jessica Grant, Supervising Transportation Planner with the City of Santa Barbara. Yo me llamo Jessica Grant. Esta presentación puede ser transmitida en español por Teresa Sori. Puede hacer clic el botón de interpretación si desea escuchar la presentación en español. So glad to have you all join us here tonight. We're here to discuss the Westside and Laura West Active Transportation Plan Implementation Project. Very long title. Thanks. We have approximately about a half an hour presentation. We'll handle all questions, comments at the end of the presentation. The purpose of tonight's webinar is we will be providing some background on the council-adopted Westside and Laura West Active Transportation Management Plan, the funding that we received from the Active Transportation Program, review the conceptual plans for the project, and review next steps and how to stay and get involved. And again, questions and feedback at the end. At any point, you're welcome to type in your question. We will answer both typed and if you want to raise your hand at the end as well, that works. So let's get into it. So the purpose of the Westside and Lower West Active Transportation Planning effort was to increase Westside neighborhood livability by addressing pedestrian, bicycle, and traffic safety issues and implementing the Vision Zero strategy. And for those of you that are not familiar with Vision Zero, it's a council-adopted strategy aimed at eliminating all fatalities and severe injuries in city roadways. There are priority corridors designated throughout the city, one of them being San Andres. So what happened during this planning effort? It was back in 2019 when we reached out to Westside and Laura West residents to receive their feedback on walking, biking, driving in the Westside and Laura West neighborhoods. So in addition to the in-person workshop, we also did supplemental survey as well. And then we did a separate from our traffic engineering staff, a collision data analysis. So wanted to, again, hear from the residents what their concerns, what their stresses are on how you navigate from your home to the neighboring parks, to schools, to the neighborhood services. What were some of those stress points? And if we were also seeing that in some of our collision data statistics as well. Then we came up with a bunch of approaches on how to do to lessen those stresses, and we came up with approaches, and then we held another community workshop back in 2019 that then ultimately received additional community feedback on that, on what was liked, supported, and all of that was summarized in the Westside Lower West Neighborhood Transportation Management Plan, that it was something that did have to go through review and approval from City Council, and that was adopted back in 2020. We do have the plan in case the residents that were on the call tonight were not a part of that planning process. It is available on our website. I'll mention the website at the end. And just so you could see what the feedback was from residents at the time. If we had to boil down what the themes were from the planning effort, it was that residents really wanted safer and inviting walking, more neighborhood lighting, specifically in the high traveled corridors, and safer biking to school and work. And a lot of those approaches to address the themes, there was already a lot of capital projects in the process that were funded and have been since that time. Majority of those projects have gone into the West Side and Lower West neighborhoods. There was also some minor operational improvements that we did, for example, extending red curb at an intersection, or tree trimming or hedge trimming to increase visibility of roadways. And then there was a list of higher dollar projects and needs to address West Side and Lower West resident concerns. And so those were mentioned as the unfunded projects. And as part of the adopted plan, the city council then gave staff the okay to then look for grant funding for those higher dollar items. And there is one particular program from the state that came on board back in 2014. It's called the Active Transportation Program, and it's really to encourage increased use of active modes of transportation. And it's an extremely competitive program. The city has done well. The projects, they've had about 6 grant cycles. It's every 2 years for that project. And we've been fortunate to receive a lot of funding from this program. And that is exactly the program that we went after to try to fund some of the improvements that were mentioned in the West Side and Lower West neighborhood transportation plan. And so we had applied in cycle 5, and we were just a couple points short of receiving the grant funding. But we resubmitted the grant application back in 2022. We had some additional outreach with the West Side and Lower West residents just to confirm scope. The items that we applied for were items that, again, would score well for that particular grant source. So really, again, a key focus is safety, and also items that would significantly increase walking and biking in the neighborhoods, such as establishing bike routes, and then having sidewalks that serve busy streets or high use destinations, or high density housing. So with the grant application, we were again successful, very, very excited. We have $19 million in grant funds. Part of the Making a Strong application was also having city matching funding. So the city, with council's blessing, had $2 million in city matching funds towards the project. So again, just about $21 million of improvements. We anticipate the bulk of these items for construction to begin in 2027. There are some improvements we were able to supplement with additional grant sources, and we are able to expedite some of the construction following up this year. So let's go over what all of this money would be going towards. And this is just a overview. We always call this grant application everything in the kitchen sink. And so I'm going to break down this graphic, and then we're going to dive into it in a little bit more detail. So everywhere where you see a yellow line, so basically San Andres corridor, and then the Modoc corridor, that represents that there is new lighting that will be installed along both of those streets. That, again, what we heard from the residents for priority lighting areas, that was those were the highest ranked areas to install lighting. Everywhere where you see a circle on this plan, where a blue circle is, that it is proposed to have intersection safety improvements. And again, I'll go over that shortly in more detail. And everywhere where you see a long blue line, and I'm hopefully everybody can see through my mouse what I'm pointing to. So Valerio, for example, Manitou Petagrosa area, Valerio Arriaga between San Pascual and the railroad tracks, Euclid, which is adjacent right next to the Westside Community Center, and Calle Real. Those are locations of the proposed sidewalk infill. Again, it's not all that was in the planning effort, but those are the locations that either ranked the highest or yes, served higher density housing or served to uses, for example, like Elings Park, that provided a large community benefit. So let's go into this a little bit further. I'm going to first start with the blue circles, and that would be the intersection improvements. So what we're proposing at the majority of the intersections where you saw the blue dot would be adding curb extensions. So this is just a cartoon graphic. So the dashed black line here, that would represent where the existing curb is. And then this black line here would represent the new curb. They're called basically curb extensions. Why they're nice for both motorists and pedestrians. And the reason they're nice for drivers is drivers, and this is just an image of what the field of vision is for a driver. So as they approach the intersection, they are able to see pedestrians sooner. And so stop compliance at intersections is higher than just your typical standard intersection, because say if a pedestrian was here, if this is the existing curb line, they're not in the cone of the driver's vision yet. And then you get, again, sometimes or poor stop compliance. That was a common theme that we heard from many residents during the outreach efforts. Another reason that they're nice for pedestrians is when the curb extensions are installed at all legs of the intersections, it shortens the amount of time pedestrians are in the roadway. And so that limits their exposure to vehicles. So I'm just taking an intersection here as an example. This is San Andres and Anapamu. If we were to go towards the left of the cyclists right here, just right there is the Westside Boys and Girls Club. This is a very popular intersection for residents to get to and from the Westside Boys and Girls Club, and also get to Harding Elementary as well. So again, this is the existing curb line. So the curb extensions would come out further in the roadway. And then in a plan view, this is would be an example again of San Andres and Victoria, of what it would look like. And again, we'd have high visibility crosswalks installed here. And then another element, and I'll show an image on the next slide, is where you see the walk sign pedestrian symbol here. That represents that it would be pedestrian rapid flashing beacons. So they would be activated by the pedestrian and lights would blink. So actually, let me just go to this slide. This is just an example of what that would look like. So especially during the early morning, the dusk hours, getting to and from school, and then and vice versa, end of school or maybe after the after school programs. This is really helpful to show drivers, hey, there is somebody that is going to be crossing the street. You'll see these sprinkled throughout the city. Most of them are on safe routes to school corridors that you see around town. The exception is we do have some along Cabrillo Boulevard. So everywhere, instead of the blue circle, everywhere where you see a star in this image, and this is all along San Andres Street, would have these curb extensions, high visibility crosswalks, and the rapid flashing beacons. So this would be a significant improvement to San Andres. Again, we've heard the stresses of crossing this very busy, well-traveled roadway. So this will be a tremendous improvement for pedestrians as they navigate across this street. And this is something, because this is a Vision Zero priority corridor, this is something that we are able to, with the supplement of additional grant sources, to expedite the construction of these intersection improvements. In addition to San Andres, as we move along Modoc Road closer to and adjacent to La Cumbre Junior High, and also the Santa Barbara Community Academy is there. Where you see a red star is also where curb extensions and rapid flashing beacons is proposed. And also, I forgot to mention, again, these are where you would also see lighting improvements and lighting over the intersections as well. Again, all with the purpose to increase pedestrian visibility and comfort. So that's just a quick overview of the intersection improvements. Let's now go into the sidewalk infill areas. So where you see a red line, that's proposed where we'll have sidewalk infill. The most requested sidewalk infill was along Valerio for majority of the Westside residents. That's how everybody gets to Ealings Park. And so now Harding Elementary School students will be able to, if they take a field trip, they will be able to use a sidewalk for their entirety of their destination. So as we start from the Ealings Park area, there would be sidewalk installed on the south side, and then sprinkled between the north and south side on Valerio as we get south of Cayuga Canyon. And then there's another important piece that we heard from residents, and it's the Manitou Pedregosa. It's sort of the blind curve area in the neighborhood. There is existing sidewalk on Manitou, and then just right as you take the curve, there is no sidewalk. So the now sidewalk would be proposed on the south side. And again, this would be a great improvement for students and families walking and to and from either Harding Elementary School, Santa Barbara Community Academy, or La Cumbre Junior High. There are some sprinkles of sidewalk infill in some of the higher density areas, and that's along West Valerio, again, between San Pasqual and the railroad tracks, and then Arriaga between San Pasqual and the railroad tracks as well. There is a little piece right at the Mitchell-Torena Bridge as you as the San Pasqual ends in a cul-de-sac, and then there's a big grade difference between the cul-de-sac and then up on the Mitchell-Torena overpass. There's a little beaten path there, and we're proposing to put stairs at that location. There's also an existing path that was widened over the last few months as well, which serves as another connection standpoint for both pedestrians and cyclists as well. As we go over, this is was not in the Westside Lower Westside plan, but it's something that when we reached out to the residents back in 2022, when we were needed to update our grant application, and Euclid Avenue has been a very long time requested sidewalk. For those that go to the Westside Community Center, you will see from the Mitchell-Trina overpass a beaten path that's been there for as long as I've been here, and then to we're proposing to formalize that. So now that would be a sidewalk connection, and then fill in the sidewalk here along Euclid to then match into the where there is existing sidewalk there. So Westside residents going to the community center will now have a walking path to get there. So it's very exciting. The last major piece of sidewalk infill is also just off of the west side, but it's along Calle Real. So this black line here is the Junipero pedestrian and bike overpass. And so all the area here is the Adams School Elementary School District. And so if those students wishing to walk to school, there isn't any sidewalk connection to get to the school here. And so this would fill in sidewalk here. It would actually be a multi-use path. Essentially from the Oak Park area, there's some existing sidewalk here, and where it ends, that's where the new sidewalk or multi-use path would pick up. So this is a very exciting improvement, especially for families walking to and from the various fairs and other events that are held at the event center over here. That will be a very nice connection. So this is, we do have one question, and we'd like to get your feedback on that tonight. And also for those that are interested in continuing on to the in-person workshop next Wednesday. And that's one section here between San Andres Street on Carrillo Street between San Andres and basically the freeway interchange. We were able to widen the south side of the sidewalk recently, and we wanted to hear your thoughts about widening the north side of the sidewalk in that section as well. I know that many West Side and Lower West residents walk to and from work in the downtown area or to the transit center, that type of thing. And so wanted to hear your thoughts if we should explore that in a little bit more detail. All right, so those were just a summary of the pedestrian improvements. Now let's go into the bike routes. So this is a map, and it's just a very simplistic graphic where you see a solid black line represents a bike route in the west side. Of course, that was recently constructed where bike-friendly streets on Gillespie and San Pasqual. There's on-street bike lanes just as you get over the Mitchell-Trina Bridge on Castillo and Bath. And then now there's a new connection along Sola Street to get into downtown, and of course, facilities on State Street as well. To the northwest of the west side is also the recently constructed separated bike route along Modoc and Las Positas. So we're left in the west side with two gaps, and what we heard from the west side residents and those also that go through the west side to commute. So a lot of Goleta residents and other residents from like the Hidden Valley area that use the west side to then cut across to get into downtown. And right now we have just timed bike lanes. And what we heard, and especially from families with the kids going to and from school, that really it did not present an all-age facility. So we'll go into detail of what we have proposed there. And then there was a lot of feedback too during the outreach efforts of getting from the west side and to the lower west neighborhoods and vice versa. And so we also evaluated that. So I'm first going to talk about the Modoc connection and also along Portezuelo, and then I'll go into the west side to lower west neighborhood connection. So along Modoc, what went into the grant application, what was community supported was for ease of directions, let's just call this the north side of Modoc and the south side of Modoc. And so along Modoc Road would be adjacent to there's existing sidewalk all along that stretch. Next to it would be a two-way cycle track. This is just an example image from Portland. This isn't quite what we would design, but similar to what we would design. So again, there would be sidewalk still that would remain. And then we would have the two-way bike lanes. The only difference is we have about a 2 to 3 feet, again, depending upon right-of-way, where we have some, we could put some vertical treatments for that. And we haven't quite figured out what that would be, but there would be a little bit of a buffer between that and the vehicular traffic. So this is, again, just the same image of the example, and this is how the existing configuration is along Modoc Road. So this is existing again in the daytime. So there's no parking on the street from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. With the on-street bike lanes. So the graphic below, we would introduce all-day parking on the south side of the street, and then you would have your two-way travel lanes. There would be some sort of buffer between the vehicular traffic and the bike lanes. Here it just shows asphalt lanes, but we're trying to elevate it so it's the same height as the sidewalk. So we have a little bit more of a buffering away from the roadway to introduce that curb. And that would be the Modoc piece of it. And there would also be a connection. So this is Modoc and Portezuelo. That's right at the intersection where the Lacumba Junior High is and Santa Barbara Community Academy. So say if a student lives on San Pasqual, they use the bike path, and they would use the new updated intersection here with the rapid flashing beacons. Then they would follow on a multi-use path in front of the junior high, because as they continue west, that is where the bike parking is for the school. And then those students that live closer to Gillespie Street, this is, they would be coming on the bike-friendly Bike Boulevard and then go again across the street into the multi-use path that just briefly before they can then park their bike. But for those residents that you're not going to school and you want to go out to Henry's Beach or Arroyo Beach, you would hop on this, go to Portezuelo, and then go out to Modoc and then connect into the path at Las Positas Modoc intersection. The only thing that we're still vacillating on before we finalize the bike design on Modoc was right now it's a two-way cycle track on the north side of the street, and we're debating whether we keep it as a two-way cycle track or do we have one-way cycle tracks on both sides of the street. We're still evaluating what that would be in terms of for parking. But we wanted to get your additional thoughts, especially if you're commuter cyclists or cyclists that familiar riding in the west side, to get your initial thoughts about that tonight. And then love to hear additional thoughts at our in-person workshop. This may warrant just a separate meeting all on its own. All right, so that covers basically the Modoc Portezuelo area in the vicinity of La Cumbre Junior High and Santa Barbara Community Academy. But the next thing was we heard Westside residents getting to and from the West Side and Lower West is not that easy. And so we have a proposed route for that. So it's basically, again, how do we safely get you from the West Side to the Lower West neighborhood? And through community outreach efforts, this was the route where we landed on. Again, what we hear from many, unless you're a very confident cyclist, that most do not like to bike on San Andreas Street. So what's the parallel street that we could use to then connect riders from West Side to Lower West? And so from that, again, you have the bike-friendly street on Gillespie. Then you could cut over on Victoria Street and then head south on Mercedes Lane. So it almost looks like it's more of an alley and a much, low volume street, especially compared to San Andres. But once you get there, then getting across the street on Carrillo is really difficult. So we need to still get back and land at the San Andres Carrillo intersection. So how we would address, and this is the piece. So this is Mercedes Lane. And this is the current existing sidewalk. So we propose to widen this and make this connection a multi-use path here. So cyclists do not have to cross the very fast-moving traffic on Carrillo to get across the other side. This is what it would look like in plan view. Again, this is Mercedes Lane. The orange represents the multi-use path, and then that would again get you to the intersection of San Andres and Carrillo. The green little dots here represent sort of the wayfinding or breadcrumbs then to get into an on-street bike lane on San Andres Street south of Carrillo. So let's look at this piece. This is right now just an image with the church on the right and then residential on the left-hand side. And so there currently cyclists have to take the lane on this stretch of roadway. What we've heard from many residents that's not comfortable. So we would introduce on-street bike lanes in this section. So what it would look like from a cross section, you would still have your sidewalk, you'd still have parking on the residential side of this street, and then there would be an on-street northbound bike lane, northbound travel lane, southbound travel lane, and a southbound bike lane. Parking would be removed on the church side of the street to accommodate this. This is what it looks like in plan view. Again, we're crossing Carrillo Street. We would go right into the on-street bike lane. This is the southbound as you go into the Lower West neighborhood. Again, this is the southbound traffic lane, northbound traffic lane, northbound on-street bike lane, and still have the parking lane here. We would also add some additional roadway lighting in this corridor. And then eventually you get to the Canon Perdido San Andres intersection. We have some intersection improvements here that would benefit all road users. And this would be sort of like a big curb realignment at this point here, again, to decrease the distance for pedestrians getting across the street. And then for cyclists going in further into the Lower West neighborhood, we also heard from many West Side residents that they continue on through the Lower West to get to out to the waterfront. So this would be the connection here. And then basically you would follow Canon Perdido Street in Wentworth. Wentworth is already a very low volume street. And then again, navigate your way out to the west, Lower West neighborhood to the waterfront. What's not part of the planning effort, but we wanted to get, again, initial feedback tonight and at the in-person workshop. This may warrant again, a separate meeting. We wanted to hear resident thoughts of if we need a higher level facility on Mitchell Terrena between Gillespie and San Andres. Right now, it's just cyclists take the lane in that section of roadway. And we wanted to hear your feedback. So this, again, this is just one image. This is one block. I believe it's the 700 block of what's Mitchell Terrena. So what you see off in the distance, and I just grabbed this from Google Earth, but this is a Foodland right here. So what that would look like is we would potentially introduce a westbound lane coming into the neighborhood. So as you know, when you go over Mitchell Terrena Bridge, there is now a nice designated bike lane, protected bike lane. And then wanted to hear thoughts of continuing this bike lane for the couple blocks to get to Gillespie, which is, again, one of the bike-friendly streets in the neighborhood. In order to accommodate that, we would need to shift the parking lane. Basically, it would be doing parking pockets. There would still need to be some on-street removal for parking. We don't know the number of what that is yet, but again, wanted to hear initial thoughts for those that are on the call tonight. So to recap, there might be a future meeting about the Mitchell Terrena bike connection on whether to do a westbound lane. What we're still doing is our homework to evaluate cost, impacts to parking and trees. Again, wanted to hear initial thoughts either tonight or at the next week's in-person meeting, or you can follow up in an email to us or a phone call. So how to stay and get involved is the best way is to check in with our website, and you can subscribe once you get to the website. And I will quickly show, let's see. I'll try to do this really quickly. This is our webpage. And there is a subscribe button here, and all you need to do is type in your email address. And if there's any news or anything upcoming, you would automatically then receive that news. And then there's also what we highlight, and for this webinar tonight, again, if any of your neighbors couldn't attend tonight, we do post the webinar on our project page as well. We also provide a little bit of background about the project, what the upcoming community meetings are, and when we have the project resources, so the concept project plans, as well as the plan, the Westside and Lower West management plan itself. And then we encourage you to also attend community meetings and attend any public meetings as well. And next steps, this is a project that we are designing. Our engineering team is doing the conceptual design. Again, for the webinar, we've had lots of outreach to even get to this project scope in the first place. But we wanted to have another touch point just with the community to just remind everybody what the grant funding is going towards. But a lot of the feedback that we like to hear is just as we start to refine the design, is there any other things that, again, could make walking and biking and driving easier as you navigate through the West Side and Northwest neighborhoods? So thank you. Again, if you have any questions or feedback, feel free to, looks like we do have questions already. Michelle Bedard, who is our project planner, and she'll help us facilitate through those questions. And then we also have Derek Bailey, our traffic engineer, on the call as well. So depending what the questions are, one of us will pop on to answer that. And again, looks like there's a lot of written questions. And then from there, if you don't want to type, you're also welcome to raise your hand and we will unmute you. So thank you very much. And the only thing for the in-person meeting that's upcoming next week, again, what you saw tonight was just a brief overview. We plan to have the actual roads maps and layouts of what is proposed, and we'll have the different themes of the crosswalk improvements, like along San Andreas, for example, a table for that, a table for along Modoc Road, and then the bike routes and that type of thing. So yeah, feel free to join us, and you get to meet our team, both the team of planners and engineers that are working on this over the next few years. So thank you so much for listening to us tonight, and let's go into the questions.
Thank you, Jessica, for the great presentation. I will go ahead and start with the first question we received in the Q&A. How do curb extensions interface with bike lanes?
Yes. That's a great question. So the short answer, so for the ones that are going on San Andreas, there are not on-street bike lanes on that. So if you are riding your bike on San Andreas, you're riding your bike as if you were driving your car. You're taking the lane. And so it would a cyclist movement would not the curb extensions would not be an impediment to the cyclist movement, because that is, again, in tandem with the vehicular movement. Where curb extensions could not be bike friendly is, say, there sometimes, and you'll see it in cities or older designs, where you have a bike lane and the bike lane sort of ends, and then a cyclist will have to quickly go towards the left and into the travel way, and then that's the conflict point. It's like a pinch point for cyclists. So that's something that we do not want to see in any of the designs to jeopardize any cyclist safety.
Thank you. Next question. What is sidewalk infill? Is it not full new sidewalk?
So the sidewalk infill means that it's adjacent to sidewalk that exists, but there's a reason that, and the infill part is where their sidewalk does not exist. So that's why we call it sidewalk infill. And so it would be brand new sidewalk. What we look at when we match the brand new sidewalk, and then sometimes with the more mature sidewalk that's existing there, we will also look to minimize any of the sort of bumps or uplifting for trees, to try to upgrade that as well, to minimize any impediments to pedestrian movements.
Thank you. Next question, comment is, this person's happy to see the safer crossings proposed for San Andreas. They say they're desperately needed. The question is if these qualify for an expedited timeline for construction, or any sense of when these may be installed. And the emphasis is that they are needed now.
Yes, we agree, they're needed now. They have been, majority of them have been in final design. Derek, if you're on the call, if you could just confirm one more time for when we're going out to bid, when residents can see it. I couldn't remember if it was the end of 2024 or 2025.
They've already been bid.
That's
So they
okay.
should be in construction this year.
Okay, so this year, 2024, we'll be seeing improvements on San
Yeah,
Andreas.
the first three will go from Anapamu up to Sola. So Anapamu, Victoria, Sola, and then the two immediately north of Mitchell Traina at Arriaga and Valerio will follow. Those might even spill into early 25, but they're all in the works.
Okay. Great, so that's coming soon. I know, as you mentioned, with your question is, yes, it's a much needed improvement. So we were very happy to be able to expedite, and that's with highway safety improvement funding, grant funding for those, and in addition to Measure A safe routes to school, because two of them are great connections to and from the Boys and Girls Club, and also to Harding Elementary for that route. So that would be the Victoria San Andreas intersection at Anapamu, Victoria.
Great. Next question regarding the curb extensions on Canon Perdido and San Andres. Question is, will there be an effort to fix the drainage at the intersection in case since the extensions would interfere and create more drainage?
Short answer to that is yes, we're looking all into that as part of the design. When we're doing our field reviews, that was cited, and actually we were able to talk to one of the adjacent tenants right at that intersection as well, that provided really helpful feedback. So yes, that is taken under consideration in the design.
Next question, will there be continuous sidewalk on Euclid Avenue between Victoria and Mitchell Traina? And I guess this again, probably following up on the infill question versus existing sidewalk.
Yes, so good question. The short answer is yes, and I'm trying to just navigate. Here it is. I'm going to just bring up the plan for that so you can see. So this is just one example where the off to the right here is the Westside Community Center. This is where there's existing sidewalk, and then this would be the tie-in. And that would, the infill part would go all the way basically to the Mitchell Traina overpass. So then there would be one connection there as well to get from the bridge sidewalk down to Euclid.
Great. Next question. How do bikes turn left from a two-way cycle track on the right side of the street, north side of MoDOC, for example? As a cyclist, I highly prefer a one-way bike track on each side of street.
Okay. And Michelle, can you just repeat that one more? So turning left on the two-way cycle track, but I'm missing what I didn't hear was the destination.
Doesn't really give a destination. Just says, how do you turn left from a two-way cycle on the right side of the street? And they use the example of the north side of MoDOC. I guess it's just kind of transitioning from a two-way.
So I think that there isn't. It's a longer answer to that, and it depends on the particular intersections that we're talking about for those left turn movements. For example, this would be the connection at Las Positas and MoDOC. So this would be the two-way path. If you were, again, coming from the west side and you want to go on the Las Positas MoDOC multi-use path. So we would actually introduce sort of like a signal phase for a diagonal connection into the path. I'll have to provide another The other like left turn movements, the ones that would probably be most used would then be getting into then to the school. Then that would be the Portezuelo connection as well. And then the rest would be yeah, I think the easiest part is, yeah, we have the layout and the plans on our website. And if there's more time, because I want to make sure we get to the majority of the questions, but I think you'll be able to trace the left turn movements for that. But that's another question, and that's why we're vacillating. Again, do we do the one-way cycle track or the two-way cycle track? So that might be just under further review, or for the person that asked that question. If they could help or follow up in an email to us of their experiences along MODOC, that would be helpful.
Okay, great. Next question. What is a multi-use path at Mercedes and Carrillo? It's a bike, walk, electric bike, rollerblades.
Yes, let me get back to that slide. Multi-use path is basically all road users. And this is the part that we're talking about. Let me get to the photo. So it would be a shared path. There's other connections. So one example that we just put in the west side, it's a very short connection, but critical connection. If you say you live on San Pasqual and you want to go to the junior high, then and you arrive at the San Pasqual Mission intersection, as you know, that's super, super busy. And so we basically created a bypass multi-use path for cyclists to hop on, so you don't have to cross into that very busy roadway along Mission. So it's sort of the same concept. We don't want to have the cyclists using Mercedes lane to then cross these very high-speed travel way on Carrillo. So it would be a mix again for walkers, bikers, joggers, electric bikes, conventional bikes again, but with the volume that we'd anticipate would be lower, that we feel like the road users can coexist.
Great. Next question. Is there any way to not get rid of all the parking on San Andres Carrillo? Parking is not getting better.
So yeah, let me get to here. And yes, that's when we look at improvements and trying to improve neighborhood livability from all road users, there's always trade-offs that are involved. And so the trade-off in that one section is, yeah, for parking removal on one side of the street. That was, again, the trade-off was to then have on-street bike lanes. And what was favored by the community and supported by council was for the parking removal on the church side of the street. But we do know, and when we have heard from many other residents, that yes, on-street parking is very, very much treasured in the neighborhood. So we really try to minimize that. And this is one stretch that, again, in trying to make our connections and facilities more for all ages, that was the trade-off, was removal on one side.
Next question, more comment, was just the preference for one-way cycle tracks. Unless it's the bike path in Las Positas. The comment continues, there is concern having to crossing MODOC to get to the bike path traveling westbound. So that's
Okay.
another comment.
Okay.
Preference for one-way cycle tracks. Next question is, why not extend the path on Carrillo to Chino? There appears to be plenty of width for traffic going up the hill, and it might actually help to slow traffic on Carrillo.
Michelle, say that one more time.
Yeah, the screen that you have right there, I think this reference to from Mercedes.
Okay.
It's saying, suggesting to extend it to Chino Street. So having that multi-path from Chino Street
Oh, okay.
to San Andres. So yeah,
Derek, did you want to hop on that to provide any additional feedback when we were exploring that initially?
Yeah, that's actually not something that we studied in much detail, getting it over to Chino. The objective was trying to make a neighborhood connection just to Mercedes Street or Mercedes Lane. What is Mercedes? At any rate, to Mercedes. Thank you. It's something we can look into. Yeah, I guess we would. I'd love to hear from the person that made that or asked that question, what the functional benefit would be. I heard slowing down traffic, but does the wider sidewalk or path have a really strong active transportation benefit by getting it over to Chino? But it's definitely something we can look at. They're right. The same width exists all the way over to Chino Street, so it seems like it should be doable.
Was there any issue with the right turn lane from Carrillo on to Chino that installing a multi-use path, would that be compromised?
Let me look at Google. I don't think so. Not if we were to combine the bike lane slot and the right turn lane.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, that's something. Thank you for the comment. We'll take a look at that.
great, thank you. And then the person that wrote that, if you want to email us or raise your hand if you have any additional follow-up input as Derek requested. Moving on, next is agreement to the improvements between Gillespie and San Andres on Mitchell Terrena. Feels like a gap and there are always parked cars on the street. So getting back to your question of improvements on Mitchell Terrena, sounds like a in support.
So that was basically to continue to explore that connection. Okay.
Next, it says, let's see. There's some surprise that there has not been a mention of the crazy intersection at Chino and Mitchell Terrena. Person says, until recently, I lived at 1429 Chino, right at the corner of Mitchell Terrena. There's heavy traffic, local drivers, the corner liquor store, deliveries, and customers coming and going, cross-town traffic to the Mesa and Shoreline, etc., and many pedestrians, kids, families, babies, and strollers. I witnessed bad driving, both seen and heard, drivers who don't want to wait for pedestrians or don't wait for pedestrians. Too many guys with something to prove, something that's speeding away from the intersection. They said, I never saw anyone get hit by a car, but it seems it will be only a matter of time. I still live in the neighborhood. I'm now on Islay and I am invested in this community. No real question there, just more.
Yeah, just a comment.
Intersection improvement for Chino and Mitchell Terrena and concern for lots of multi interests and activities of the roadway.
Okay, thank you.
Next, says, thank you for your focus on safe routes to school. Any news on restarting the MTD crosstown shuttle? It is important transportation for Harding students, especially if rarely in rain.
That is something that we could follow up with MTD on. We meet with them regularly. A lot of it was, as with most, I think, employment centers, and especially during the pandemic, where there's staff shortages and they're still rebounding. So a lot of the lines were cut not because of need for those wanting to use those routes, is they just didn't have enough bus drivers. But yeah, we can follow up with that. And if you could maybe follow up with an email with that comment, and we can respond to you later after we touch base with them.
Okay, next, yes, it says, yes, please continue bike lane westbound on Mitchell-Torrena to Gillespie and preserve on-street parking. Comment there. Next,
Yeah, and I think that would be the as we explore that, and that would probably be a focus meeting just on that. And if we would try to preserve as most of the on-street parking as feasible, but knowing that when we have those parking pockets, that we wouldn't be able to preserve all of the parking.
okay, this is also from the same individual that mentioned the continuation of the multi-use path to Chino Street. And next comment says, yes, there should be some sort of consideration for cyclists on Mitchell-Torrena on the west side. Parking is critical there, so I would think painting of bike lane images would be enough so as to not reduce the parking availability in the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Next, comment says, this all looks promising. However, you made improvements already and increased bike paths. Couple of concerns. One, there's not a whole lot of info for bike riders regarding new bike routes, like such as maps, QR codes with new bike lanes, etc. Most bike riders are still using the heavily trafficked routes they have always used. Is there any plan to increase education? I'll let you answer that, and then I'll continue on the next few questions.
Yes, the short answer is yes. We do work with Move Santa Barbara County. They used to be part of the Santa Barbara Bicycle Coalition, or the Coalition of Sustainable Transportation. Those two organizations merged into Move Santa Barbara County. They provide a lot of the outreach in all of the schools, and usually when we get new infrastructure, we also do specific trainings for that infrastructure. We have done, we had a promotional video done for the Westside, but we're trying to, as a part 2, have an instructional video for the new infrastructure. We've also updated all of our maps, and then we're working regionally too to update all of the new routes. It does take a while once infrastructure is in to settle as new transportation patterns. It's about 3 to 6 months for that to kind of take hold. And then as part of this grant, we do have a non-infrastructure component to it. So we do have, once all of this infrastructure goes in, we do have additional funds to work with Move Santa Barbara County to do community rides, and as well as the elementary and junior high education. This also does help purchase or have money to basically purchase a bike fleet for junior high. We have bike fleets for the elementary age riders, but once you're in junior high, again, all shapes and sizes, but a lot of kids already need adult bikes at that age. And so we're going to be working at procuring bikes for that to introduce in PE education. And again, through that will be additional teaching kids and families, again, how to safely use the recently installed bike infrastructure. So it's very exciting.
Thank you. So next part is just an example regarding Gillespie Street, which says there are curb extensions, a two-way bike lane, and an area that forces bike riders into the narrowed road, specifically between Mission and Pedregosa. just more of concern with education and using multiple roadway users.
Okay.
Next item is plantings are all non-native. Why not use this new space to increase usable plantings for native fauna? Gotten into a landscape plan yet?
We haven't gotten to the details. There will be tree planting opportunities in some landscaping, but we work closely with the city arborist, and we are required to. There's an adopted urban forest plan, and for a specific call out for trees depending upon which street you live on, and then of course anything of the lower level shrubs has to meet our water wise standards, and there's a requirement for natives for that.
Right. And then finally, it was more of a concern of in heavy rains, the drainage, there's drainage concerns and potentially puddling. It says during rains, there's a virtual lake at the end of Mercedes at Carrillo. Just
Okay, thank you.
Next, it mentions, says previous plans indicated that the infill on Euclid stops at the 1322 apartment building. While there is sidewalk from 1322 to the Westside Center, there have never been curbs from 1310 onward. We have railroad ties as temporary curb for the last 30 years, but it is unsafe for people parking there and it is falling apart. There is no need to replace the sidewalk, but the request is to please replace the curb in front of the homes that currently have no curb. Or a request and consideration for the infill improvements on Euclid.
Okay.
Next, another question regarding the crosstown shuttle for MTD. Interests in wanting that program to be resumed.
Okay, thank you.
They also mentioned that would help alleviate some of the traffic volumes. Next, perhaps classes through BC Centro about how to navigate our city on bikes safely would be good for the city to sponsor. So more about education of existing and recent new and proposed bike infrastructure.
Yes, just a quick response to that is regionally, we all set aside grant funding towards education to move SBC. So that would be the city of Carpinteria, the county, us, city of Goleta, etc. And then they also Move SBC does education also in North County as well. So and then I encourage you guys to, if you're interested, there's a lot of just great opportunities, especially through BC Centro on just basic bike mechanics. And there's special classes for women on how to maintain your bike. And they do offer adult classes as well. And if there's enough of demand, we can work to have specialized training in certain neighborhoods as well.
Thank you. Next is a question if there will be more garbage cans. Guess we're asking if we can add more garbage cans. It's not very specific. If it's
okay, if they could follow up with an email to just highlight some of the issue areas. Garbage cans are not scoped in this, but there's longer responses to that I would prefer our environmental services team to respond to, but please provide some details to that and issue areas that you're seeing.
Next question is, are there plans to put up traffic signs for recent speed humps that have been added on San Pascual from Mission to Arriaga streets?
For the roadway speeds, is that it? Derek, do you want to respond to that? The question was for looking to, we just introduced the new bike friendly infrastructure with having the various speed tables, speed humps, that type of thing. And just how we, if you could just kind of quickly go over once we have a new traffic treatment of what we do in post review.
Yeah, there's typically warning signs at the first speed hump when a new speed hump corridor is established. I'd have to check it with the person that was working on the signs just to as to whether or not they're complete out there, but that's typically the approach.
And then Derek, and then is there an evaluation of speed afterwards? So kind of go over what the posted speed on San Pasquale and if there would be any changes.
We weren't planning to do it on San Pasquale. It's already a neighborhood street, so the speed limit, it's unposted, it's 25 miles an hour, so there wouldn't be any change to the speed limit.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next question regarding the question says the beaten path from San Pasquale cul-de-sac onto Mitchell Terrena overpass. Will that be sidewalk or stairs? I believe they meant the beaten path on Euclid at the Euclid Street cul-de-sac to Mitchell Terrena.
Actually, no, say that again because I think it's.
Is there?
Yeah, repeat that comment.
It says the beaten path from San Pasquale cul-de-sac onto Mitchell Terrena overpass.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
That
We
sidewalk.
yeah, hold on. I'm just gonna go into Google Maps real quick.
Oh, is that the?
Yeah, so
Yeah,
this
there's
is
another
the
one.
end of the cul-de-sac at San Pasquale on the north side of the bridge. And this was the path connection from the end of the cul-de-sac that was widened with the prior grant funded project that gets you out to Mitchell Terrena. But those that are able-bodied, you could see that there's beaten paths up this little hill connection. That portion would be a stair connection.
Great, thank you. Just somebody thanking us for our time and attention. Let's move on. Thank you. Next question, how much does an intersection curb extension cost to build? How much does an intersection curb extension cost to build?
Ballpark, it's about 50,000 per corner, but it really depends. It can vary widely depending on drainage, utilities, sidewalk condition, how far back we have to chase certain repairs. So that range can vary a lot. And in addition to the curb extensions, add on top of that, when we typically do a crosswalk improvement like that, we add lighting for safety at nighttime. So that's an additional cost. And then the crosswalks along San Andreas Street will also get the rapid flashing beacons. So that's plus. Lighting varies pretty widely as well. It depends on if there's a easily accessible power source. We have to trench underground conduit to wherever the SCE power source is. So if it's nearby, it can be done fairly cost effectively. If we have to trench down the block, it can add up. Just for the lights themselves, they're usually $8,000 to $10,000 plus whatever it's going to cost to get to that power source.
Those residents that it's public works dollars for projects, it's always really expensive. If you could think about how our grocery bills have been, it's just exponential in the infrastructure dollars to carry out our projects. But and again, it's time is money. Just if we the quicker we could get to like community consensus, and that's why we have those planning efforts to represent the consensus. And, you know, we see this kind of as the next before we finalize design. We see this really as the refinement stage, but the sooner we can get to that refinement and projects out to bid, the less expensive they are, rather than waiting years through time. So that's always our goal, to minimize the costs.
Thank you. Next question. With Loma Alta closed several months of the year, have there been any discussions about closing it permanently to vehicles and making it a pedestrian bicycle pathway?
Yeah, Derek, I know that you've that's been your area of expertise and all the discussions, because there's been lots of neighborhood meetings and community output on that. So if you could summarize that, that'd be great.
Sure. Yeah, when when the Loma fire happened, was a little over 3 years ago, we had a community meeting just to talk about the risk of slides down the hill, and we committed to the neighborhood to keep Loma Alta closed during rainy season for 3 years while the hillside reestablished, and just to see if we were going to have any problems. So far it looks good. So this is the 3rd year. This is the last year that it's planned to be closed over the winter. We've heard feedback both ways. There's some people that really think the road should stay open and don't see a need to close it at all during the winter. We've heard the exact opposite. It should be turned into a pedestrian and bike space, and that's something that the city should be working on. It's not something we have time to work on in our workloads right now, so unless it becomes a council priority, it's not something that we're planning to work on. And when the street opens back up in the spring, it'll stay open.
Didn't get that. Could you try again?
Oh, that was Siri. Siri's listening.
Michelle, I think there is one person with their hand raised. If we could take one of the comments that way. Oh,
I don't see that.
oh no. Okay, the hand's down now. Okay, all right. Then yeah, keep going on. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. We have about how many?
13 questions.
13 questions. Okay.
Okay, next question. Great to see all the rapid rectangular flashing beacons and expedited installation for pedestrian crossings over San Andres, and the new bike lanes planned on San Andres east of Carrillo into lower west neighborhoods, and bike box at Carrillo intersection. Agree with the added bike treatments on West Micheltorena Street between San Andres and Gillespie. Thank you for the webinar and the open house.
Thank you for your comments, and yes, you're welcome.
Okay, next item. For the Upper Valerio Street sidewalk infill, how will the new sidewalk navigate existing features such as decorative mailboxes or a large oak tree? Will the sidewalk bump out into the street, or will the mailboxes, trees be removed? Would the homeowners receive any compensation for losing their mailbox or tree?
Those are all great questions. As part of the design, it was getting a survey in place to have an understanding of all that's potentially in the path for the new sidewalk layout. Again, there's always the goal to try to preserve as many existing trees as feasible. But yeah, we'll have to go into those details more as we complete the design, and that those basically do trigger a lot of just one-on-one meetings with the adjacent property owners for that. And sometimes for a tree preservation, sometimes we're able to pinch the sidewalk down just a little bit in that one section, again, to preserve the tree. But I can't remember if we have quantified our ballpark for the tree removal. I'm not sure yet, but that is something that we will follow through in the design.
Great, thank you. Next question I just want to take a moment to mention. I'm not sure, it's from an anonymous attendee, and I think they're trying to get to, they want to see a particular slide from the presentation. It's not specified. It just says don't revert to ending slide, leave the one slide. So if this person can follow up and clarify if
what
you
the
want to see like
slide-
the last slide or like the questions, the websites. Yeah, thank you, Jessica, for going to that. I'm not sure if that's the one they were wanting, but that's a good one to put for now. And if there's another slide you want to see, please add your comment or raise your hand. Next item, all these improvements are very exciting and are urgently needed. Is it possible for bag buttons at all traffic lights to be eliminated for cyclists in favor of loop detectors? And can such buttons be set to prioritize pedestrians and bikes to minimize the time we're breathing traffic fumes at intersections?
So for the, if I'm understanding that correctly, for the rapid flashing beacons, that they're also accessible for the cyclists as well.
Not familiar with the terminology, but it says bag
Can you
button.
reread that, Michelle?
Yeah, it says, is it possible for, and they put in quotes, bag buttons at all traffic lights to be eliminated for cyclists in favor of loop detectors? And can such buttons be prioritized for pedestrians and bikes to minimize time they're waiting and breathing in traffic fumes?
So a big button is another word for a push button. There's only one traffic signal in the city that has a push button. That's the new contraflow lane northbound Castillo at Mitchell Traina. The city uses video detection pretty widely. Generally better for cycling detection than loops, especially if you have a bike that's very expensive that doesn't have a lot of metal parts to it. So that's the city's strategy for bicycle detection. As far as the amount of wait time for pedestrians and cyclists, the city generally uses very short cycle lengths compared to most other cities, and that reduces waits for everybody. So that's our approach to that. We do run a coordinated system in our downtown area, so the traffic signals are synchronized together, but in order to mitigate the waits, we do use very short cycle lengths, and again, compared to most other cities.
Thank you, Derek. Next, just more of a comment, just again, another strong preference for one-way cycle paths. It says, this keeps a cyclist more in tune with the car traffic. Two-way cycle paths adjacent to car traffic is confusing to drivers. Next, this is the person following up along the requesting the extension of the multi-use path to Chino Street on Carrillo. Says, I asked the question about extending the multi-use path to Chino. I was just thinking that Mercedes is not a very well-used alley, and Chino is the most common used pathway for all vehicles in this area. If you are going to extend the path to Mercedes, it seems logical to extend it to the most used street in this area rather than try to force people to change how they travel. And did anyone talk to the people who live on Mercedes if they would like their traffic volume increased? So just following up on that extension.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next is question if there are any changes on Mitchell Traina should consider the delivery trucks to Foodland that take up the entire traffic lane.
Thank you for bringing that up. That's a something that we definitely need to weigh in on that westbound bike route and the conflicts between the delivery trucks. So that has been brought up from lots of Westside residents throughout this process, and yeah, trying to land on a good design that is safe.
Okay, thank you. Next, since there is a lot of illegal parking in the bike lane on Mitchell Terrena, as well as illegal turns and crossings before the bridge, along with usual running of lights on San Andres and Mitchell Terrena. The situation is often very dangerous for cyclists and pedestrian. What is the plan for increasing enforcement?
Thank you for the comment. I would probably like to hear a little bit more from that person, to reach out an email for observations for that, or time of day observations for that could help out to direct, if from an enforcement standpoint, would be helpful. Thank you.
Next, thank you, Jessica and everyone. This is the best city community meeting I have attended in 20 years. Well organized, great visuals, no city jargon, acronyms, generous time for questions, continuous Spanish interpretation, thoughtful and knowledgeable replies to every question. Well done. Thank you for that. Yes, good job.
Thank you. We appreciate the comment.
Next, are there any plans to clean the existing Cornell Hill path behind McKinley School, which is an important student pedestrian neighborhood connection? It is still damaged from the floods.
Okay,
I can
Derek, I
answer
know
that
that's
one.
a common one, so yeah, go
Yep.
ahead, and if you have the latest update.
Yeah. They're not here tonight, but our engineering division is working on a project, not only to clean it up, but to stabilize the hill as well. We know right now, every time it rains, more and more of the hillside is sloughing off onto the path, and we just got to keep cleaning it until it can be stabilized. So yes, that's being worked on.
Thank you. Next, also regarding education, says there are many bikers in Santa Barbara who ride on sidewalks, even where there are existing bike lanes. It makes it very dangerous at intersections and one-way streets. How might community education on how to navigate the various types of lanes be part of the success of this transportation plan rollout?
Thank you. That's a great comment. And generally speaking, the bike riding on sidewalks is prohibited in the city. That being said, where you see the most sidewalk riding is done by our youth, and a lot of times that when we see that, it's because the roadway's not working as an all-age facility. Even with on-street bike lanes, doesn't necessarily mean that they're all comfortable. Again, it just depends on what part of the city, what time of day you're at, etc. So you will still see sidewalk riding, and that's something that we are attuned to, and understanding cyclist movements to try to get in better, higher level facilities throughout the city.
Thank you. And just at this point, 3 more questions in our questions and answers. I don't see any raised hands. So next question is, are there any bike improvements considered for West Valerio between Robbins and Elings Park? On-street bike lane or chevron markings? There's a fair amount of bike traffic on this stretch, particularly mountain bikers using Elings Park. The new speed humps have helped reduce vehicle speeds, but additional improvements should be considered. So again, the question, are we considering any improvements for West Valeria between Robbins and Elings Park? Bike improvements.
Did you want to respond to that one, Derek?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Good question. In order to provide a better facility through that area would be a lot of parking removal, And when the neighborhood transportation plan was put together about 5 years ago, it's not a street we got a lot of feedback on at the time, so it wasn't prioritized for this particular grant funded project. Certainly something that could be considered, but the trade-off is a lot of parking removal, and my gut tells me that that's probably too much parking removal, but you know, we're open if that's what the community wants, but I'd expect there'd be a lot of pushback on that.
Thank you. Next, referencing to SB Move says Move is teaching an e-bike skills and community ride this Saturday from 1 to 3:30 at Goleta Valley Junior High. Just a shout out for that, saying you can sign up online at movesbcounty.org/events. It says if it is raining at 10 a.m. it will be rescheduled to the following Saturday, January 27th. Thank you. And that's from Vanessa, for the education and encouragement coordinator. Thank you, Vanessa, for that comment.
Perfect. And I'd encourage those that have e-bikes or somebody in your family to go. Even if you don't have an e-bike, it's still good because a lot of the education is just your standard rules of the road. And so it is just, they're always very helpful. Move does a fantastic job at these types of training. So I highly encourage residents to go. So yes, the Goleta Valley. And if you do have kids, that you most likely receive something in Parent Square about the upcoming event. So thank you, Vanessa, for sharing that with us on the call tonight.
Yes. Thank you. And Jessica, if you could jump back to the questions page. Slide. A follow-up for Derek. So Derek, I missed the answer, but will the part-time bike lane be removed on the west side of Gillespie, north of Mission? Street sweeping, moving cars is tricky on Thursday.
No, the only parking restrictions that were eliminated were on the east side, and the reason for that is the way the intersection is configured at the Gillespie Mission intersection. Really cuts down on the northbound traffic volume. So for cyclists going north towards Portezuelo, they don't have a lot of conflicts. But there are no restrictions for southbound traffic. So from Portezuelo going towards Mission. So especially for children after school, that's why that route was initially established. They're still competing with a lot of traffic going in that same direction.
Thank you. Next, I understand the closing of Loma Alta for the rainy season, but as a cyclist and a car driver, it would be a great loss of a short route to the beach and to SBCC if the road were closed permanently to car traffic. This route also alleviates some of the traffic on Castillo Bath to go to and from SBCC, Ledbetter, and the harbor area.
So I think one of the, if you weren't part of another webinar we had recently, is we also received grant funding, about $27 million along Cliff Drive to put a separate bike path, multi-use path in one small section as you climb up the hill from the Lower West neighborhood to City College would be a multi-use path. But from a grade perspective for cyclists, Loma Alta versus Cliff, it's less of a grade along Cliff Drive. So we anticipate for Westside and Lower West residents, as you hook into, I guess, Montecito, and then it turns into Cliff, that would be its own, path to get up to City College. So tremendous improvement there. The timing is also right around 2027 as well, but all of Cliff Drive, which is 3.1 miles, will have a separated bike facilities and a number of pedestrian crossing enhancements. So our team is very busy with that project as well. So it's really exciting because between the infrastructure improvements in the West Side, Lower West neighborhoods and what is on coming on Cliff Drive are really synergistic. So we're excited to see both projects moving forward. We also have improvements on Milpas as well. So again, really great community projects coming soon.
Thank you. looks like the final question at this time. Is asking, is the new fence along Mission Creek on Euclid included in this grant funded project?
Let's see.
I-
It wouldn't be included, but I think we'll have to get back to that resident. Do you have any additional information, Derek, for the fence?
Yeah, it's
Mission
not,
Creek
it's not
adjacent.
part of this project. It's, I know it's been discussed at the Neighborhood Improvement Task Force,
Right.
but it's not, active transportation related per
Right.
se, so not part of this project.
And not, nothing that's funded at this point in time from another.
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
I know it's been talked about. I just don't know the status of it.
Okay. Yeah. If that resident, if you could shoot us an email on that and we can, put you to the appropriate, staff person so we can follow up. Mhm.
That would be great.
Okay, thank you. One additional comment just came in and says, comment from my perspective, I disagree about primarily youth riding on sidewalks. All sidewalk bike riders I see daily in downtown area are fully adults, primarily on Bath and Castillo Street. So just more of a comment.
Yeah, that's actually, we agree with that comment right in there. And we do, there is a high percentage of adult riders in that one section. And, we all have been looking into like where the the Castillo connection, the undercrossing to get to Santa Barbara City College, all the approaches for that. And I'm forgetting this. I'm sorry, I'm blanking out. On Haley Street too, would have some improvements. So that is one area that we observe. So yes, it's not all youth. We do see adult sidewalk riding as well. But again, it's typically not to defy city regulations. It's usually a sign that we are missing higher level bike infrastructure.
Okay, there's no additional questions at this time and no raised hands. So maybe Jessica, if you want to give a quick plug to our in-person meeting next week.
Yes, our in-person meeting will be at 5:30. It's not a presentation like we had tonight. Again, we'll just have different topic tables. You'll be able to see the roadway layout for the certain sections. We'll have post-it notes if you want to add any comments. And yeah, we'll have a couple of those extra questions about the one-way cycle track question, bike facilities on Metro Torrena between Gillespie and San Andreas. If there's anything else, again, that you feel like that you want us to dive into at the in-person meeting, again, feel free to reach out via email. And yeah, please come, please let your neighbors know to come as well. We tend to have higher participation in person for the Westside. And so we're looking forward to seeing you all in person as well. So thank you so much for sharing your evening with us tonight. We really appreciate it. And it's fabulous questions and great comments. Again, this really helps us really get to, again, making Westside and Lower West safety improvements and to make it easier to walk and bike and drive in the neighborhood. So thank you very much.